Man's Search for Meaning, page 49. I mentioned earlier how everything that was not connected with the immediate task of keeping oneself and one's closest friends alive lost its value. Everything was sacrificed to this end. The man's character became involved to the point that he was caught in a mental turmoil which threatened all the values he held and threw them into doubt. Under the influence of a world which no longer recognized the value of human life and human dignity, which has robbed man of his will and had made him an object to be exterminated, having planned, however, to make full use of his first to the last ounce of his physical resources. Under this influence, the personal ego finally suffered the loss of values. If the man in the concentration camp did not struggle against this in a last effort to save his self-respect, he lost the feeling of being an individual, a being with a mind, with inner freedom and personal value. He thought of himself then as only a part of an enormous mass of people. His existence descended to the level of an animal life. The men were herded, sometimes to one place, then to another, sometimes driven together, then apart, like a flock of sheep, without the thought of a will of their own. A small but dangerous pack watched them from all sides, well versed in the methods of torture and sadism. They drove the herd incessantly backwards and forwards with shouts, kicks, and blows. And we, the sheep, thought of two things only: how to evade the bad dogs and how to get a little food. Just like sheep that crowd timidly into the center of a herd, each of us tried to get into the middle of our formations. That gave one a better chance of avoiding the blows of the guards, who were marching on either side and to the front and rear of our column. The central position had the added advantage of affording protection against the bitter winds. It was therefore in an attempt to save one's own skin that one literally tried to submerge into the crowd. This was done automatically in the formations. But at other times, it was a very conscious effort on our part, in conformity with one of the camp's most imperative laws of self-preservation. Do not be conspicuous. We tried at all times to avoid attracting the attention of the SS. There were times, of course, when it was possible and even necessary to keep away from the crowd. It is well known that an enforced community life, in which attention is paid to everything one does at all times, may result in an irresistible urge to get away, at least for a short while. The prisoner craved to be alone with himself and his thoughts. He yearned for privacy and for solitude. And after my transportation to a so-called rest camp, I had the rare fortune to find solitude for about 5 minutes at a time. Behind the earthen hut where I worked, and in which were crowded about 50 delirious patients, there was a quiet spot in the corner of the double fence with barbed wire surrounding the camp. A tent had been improvised there with a few poles and branches of trees in order to shelter a half a dozen corpses, the daily death rate in the camp. There was also a shaft leading to the water pipes. I squatted on the wooden lid of this shaft whenever my services were not needed. I just sat and looked out at the green flowering slopes and the distant blue hills of the Bavarian landscape, framed by the meshes of barbed wire. I dreamed longingly, and my thoughts wandered north and northeast in the direction of my home. But I could only see clouds. The corpses near me, crawling with lice, did not bother them. Only the steps of passing guards could rouse me from my dreams. Or perhaps it could be a call to the sick bay, or to collect a newly arrived supply of medicine for my hut, consisting of perhaps 5 or 10 tablets of aspirin to last for several days for 50 patients. I collected them and ended my rounds, feeling the patient's pulses and giving half tablets to the serious patients. But the desperately ill received no medicine. It would not have helped, and besides, it would have deprived those for whom there was still some hope. For like cases, I had nothing, except perhaps a word of encouragement. In this way, I dragged myself from patient to patient, though I myself was weak and exhausted from a serious attack of typhus. Then I went back to my lonely place on the wood cover of the water shaft.